Tour. Community Journalism Center, and I'm very honored and privileged to introduce our media mentor today. When people think about big journalism, they often picture national newsrooms, cable studios, or viral headlines. But today's media mentor is here to remind us that some of the most important journalism in the country is happening in small towns where reporters know the streets, the schools, the city leaders, and the people they serve. So please welcome Jamie Patterson, editor and publisher of the Yazoo Herald. Jamie oversees every part of the newspaper, from the newsroom to the business side, and has spent her career proving that community journalism still has the power to create real impact. After graduating from Delta State University, she worked at both weekly and daily newspapers before joining the Yazoo Herald in 2007. And let's just say she's collected a few awards along the way. Jamie is an 8-time recipient of the Bill Miner Award, one of Mississippi's highest honors in journalism. And in 2024, she made Mississippi press history by winning 3 of the state's top journalism awards in the same year for investigative reporting, general news reporting, and editorial writing, which is basically the journalism version of a Triple Crown. Today, Jamie will lead a session titled Small Town, Big Impact: Why Community Journalism Still Matters. She'll talk about how local journalists hold powerful people accountable, fight misinformation, and build trust in the communities that are too often overlooked. Her work is proof that you do not have to work in New York or Washington to make a difference. Sometimes the stories that matter most are happening right down the road. So please join me in welcoming Jamie Patterson.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to start standing up here, but I might start moving around because I get kind of nervous, even, in front of young people, because I don't want to look like I don't want to look like a dork. So, but before I really start on the journalism part, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me, so I'm more than just a face standing up here looking at y'all. My name's Jamie Patterson. I'm 44 years old. I'm married to my husband, Jason, and we have 3 children. James, who just graduated this last May. We have a little girl, Elsie, who's in high school, and our little boy, Jace, just goes to middle school. And I grew up in a little small town. Does anybody know where Monticello, Mississippi is? How do you know where that's at? Huh? Okay. Well, my grandparents lived there. My mom lived in Natchez. Anybody know where anybody from Natchez? Okay. So I tossed my time up growing up from there. I've been in the journalism business for about 25 years. Outside of journalism, I'm really into vintage stuff. I love mid-century. I'm going to go Lucky Rabbit when I leave here. I love that stuff. I'm a big movie fan. Coen brothers are my favorite movie director. I love them. If you have not watched the Coen brother film, watch all of them. Music, I listen to anything from Beethoven to Social Distortion. I'm a wide, eclectic range. I've insisted that Iggy Pop be played at my funeral, which my kids make fun of me about. If anybody knows who Iggy Pop is, he's check him out too. But that's just kind of a little bit of who I am. I'm this quirky, just off-the-wall person that loves meeting interesting people and hearing different angles of life, which is exactly why I got into this business. When I was probably, I'd say 8, I was digging around in my grandparents' closet and I found an old Royal typewriter. And I got some paper and I just started playing on it for a little bit, and then I decided that I was going to make a newspaper. And I lived on a dead-end road. There ain't a lot going on a dead-end road. So I would go around my neighborhood and ask people kind of how their tomato garden was doing, or somebody's dog ran off, or there was gossip about who moved into the house at the end of the road. And I would type all these interviews on multiple sheets of paper, and then I would go to my neighbor's house and charge them $0.25 for the newspaper. And I guess at first, I think maybe they did it because it's like that kid selling lemonade. You're going to buy the lemonade even if you don't want lemonade. So I think they did it just because I was a little kid. And then when I saw that they were buying it, I bumped it up to $1. And so I kind of had that journalism / business aspect in me. And when I started after high school, I knew I wanted to go into journalism 100%. I didn't want to do anything else. And I got my journalism degree at Delta State. I worked at a small town in Cleveland, Mississippi at the Bolivar Commercial, which is sadly no longer there. That's where I kind of got my feet wet. I left there and went to Clarion Ledger, which I'm sure all of y'all know, the state paper. I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't really like just kind of being at a big paper. I wanted to do something more rural. So my husband and he was my fiance at the time. He said, well, he got a job at the Yazoo Herald in his hometown of Yazoo City, and that's when I showed up and got a job reporting, and now I'm the publisher. So, but I think what I like most about it is that when I was growing up, I thought that I would not be successful unless I worked at like a huge paper. And my goal was to get to the Clarion Ledger. After that, I wanted to go to the Boston Globe. And I had this idea that to be a success story, you needed to go big. And then when I started working at a small Mississippi Delta rural paper, the light bulb went off about how important local journalism in small communities is just as vital as those big operations. Everybody's got one of these now. You can get national news every morning when you tap your phone, but you don't know what's going on in your backyard unless you have a local newspaper. I really like being a watchdog, especially for government. If you let government know that they don't have anybody walking behind them, for lack of better wording, I'm not going to use that word because it's live and I can't cuss. But if government officials and elected officials kind of know they don't have a watchdog, they will run wild. So you have to be that watchdog from your community. Watch taxpayer dollars, watch programs. And I really enjoy that aspect really the most, is the investigative political local scene. And if you want a cool, vibrant political scene, you go to a small town. They have characters for days. I enjoy the general side of it, and I enjoy the feature writing because that goes back to when I was a kid, kind of getting to know people. But the investigative side is what I really like the most, and that's what most of my awards from the State Press Association came from, investigative pieces. Public records are your friend. They're vital to what we do. I am a public record requesting fool. I request for public records probably once every other week. That's your key in the door, but it just gets you in the door. You have to kind of have that drive to really pursue the angles that your readers need to know about. Anybody, feel free to talk or ask anything, because I feel like I'm just rambling. Does anybody have any questions? Or, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
How much money are you spending on public records requests every month?
Do y'all have to pay for public, or how much do y'all pay?
We've had two that we've done with MDOT. They've been under $100 for bridge inspection reports. And then we have one situation that we're dealing with right now with Richmond, where they're asking for us to give them a deposit for open records.
I found a loophole. I got humbled really quick one time when I was going for some court records, and it was $400 and something. And I was like, I may need one paper, one sheet out of that whole stack, So I found a loophole. When I'm filling out mine, I don't request for copies. I request to inspect. And I'm blessed that in my town, I could just go, in a 5-minute drive. Now, that might not work for y'all when y'all are reaching out to like MDOT and things like that, but that cuts off on the copying fee. Now, they'll get you for the time it took to look up the information for you. But I kind of found a loophole with the inspection part. I tell them, don't make a single copy, don't charge me for a copy, just give me a folder and put it in front of me and I'll come down there and look at it. And so inspections kind of been my little loophole, and knowing that, I probably spend less than $100 a year because I go to physically look at the documents. Now, when you get that $400 bill, you kind of have to rewire and think, I need to ask for a specific. You know, because sometimes I'll ask for something real broad because I'm hoping I find something else. I just kind of want to get in the door. But when it's the $400 bill like that, then you get right down to the nitty gritty. I think some of the funnest stories I've ever done was I got this press release from UMC. Does anybody know about the Asylum Hill project that's going on at UMC? UMC used to be the state hospital for the state mental hospital. And asylum, lunatic asylum. I think it was even called the lunatic asylum at one time. I mean, back when it was not PC. And they were doing some renovations at the hospital to build a parking lot or another building or something. And they uncovered this mass grave system of where they buried some of the mental patients back in the day that were not identified, not marked anything. So they uncovered all these graves, and they were starting to piece together who these people were. And you'll get press releases like that, and you might run it just because it's kind of an interesting thing. But then I was like, well, how does that affect Yazoo? How does that affect Yazoo County? So I did some digging in their database, and I found like 13 people that were Yazoo natives, and I got their names. And I went back and spent weeks trying to find out who these people were. And what I found was that most of them were committed for reasons that just blow your mind, like menopause. Not like you think like schizophrenia or, you know, like a true mental disorder, but some of these people were admitted for just a bad day, just mild depression, menopause. And what I found was crazy was that there was one thing that I didn't take into account is some people showed signs of like hallucinations because it was vitamin deficiency. It was a rural South. We were poor in some areas. It was the Great Depression. It was we were barely surviving with our diet. So some of our vitamin deficiencies made us appear to kind of be off our rocker a little bit. And then I found people that were kin to these people, that maybe it was a great aunt that they didn't know even was in a mental hospital. And that really, to me, was an awesome story because I finally was able to put a name to somebody and their story. And they weren't just a forgotten person in a mass burial plot. And things like that are what really make me proud, is to give a voice or a story to the people that can't speak for themselves. I've sat on porches of mothers whose 13-year-old were shot in gun violence and killed, and cried with them and made that child more than just another murder victim. This was a person, and this is who he is. This is his name. I've written about, it's not embezzlement, it's mismanagement of funds with certain government agencies. And when that paper hits the stands and you realize that you've corrected an injustice or you've righted a wrong, that's the best feeling in the world, to know that your name's on that and your name did that. Nobody from Jackson's coming down and doing it. Nobody from Hattiesburg's coming to do it. Nobody from DeSoto County. It's all Yazoo-based news that I was a part of. And to me, that's what keeps me coming to work every day. Because trust me, if you say, we were just talking about it before y'all got here, if you think you're going to make big money, you're not. I still eat ramen noodles some days. You've got to be in this business because you love it and you want to serve your people. And that's what your readers are, your people. And the day we don't have journalism in our local communities, that's a scary thought. We've got news deserts now in our state where there's communities that have no new media. And I can only imagine what's going on there when you don't have that watchdog kind of looking out for things. That's why community journalism is so important, and that's why y'all are important, because I know that I always had this vision, like you've seen those old movies, those black and white movies, you know, where the reporters have the hat, the fedora hat, and they're all like in the newsroom, and they got like a whiskey in their, you know, in their drawer, and it's just, those days are over. We're having to adapt to a new way of doing journalism, and that's what y'all will be doing. But even though the methods are different, the core is still very much there. When I started at the Herald, we had 13 people in the building, and now we have 3. And one of those is a bookkeeper, and the other one handles classifieds. So I literally probably do 9 jobs daily. I interview, I cover government meetings, I cover crime, politics, feature writing, I write obits, I lay out the paper, I sell ads, I build ads, I clean the toilets. I mean, it's all full court press job. And it's stressful, it's very stressful. But going back to kind of what I said, when you have that piece of paper in your hand, or if it's digital, knowing that your name's on something that told a story, gave a voice, or corrected an injustice, that's the best feeling in the world. And we got to get rid of Facebook reporting. I'm so tired of social media reports. Social media has made everybody an expert. And my grandpa, he was a James Jackson, he was a poor sharecropper, but he always told me the emptiest cart always makes the most noise. So most people on social media that are these experts that are so loud and in your face, 90% of them don't know what they're talking about. So, and we've gotten as a society where we rely a lot on social media, and that it's kind of the end-all be-all, and it's not. You need accurate, credible reporting, whether you're doing it at a digital-based avenue or if you have a old-school ink and paper, you need to have people who know what they're doing, that know how to ask the right questions and and get the facts. The worst thing we can do in our era is have misinformation. All you gotta do is look on your TV and you're bombarded with just this side, that side, and you don't even know what's right half the time. You feel like sometimes you gotta just chomp through the mud, you know, to get the real meat. So we need qualified people on the fence, people covering all angles. And don't ever think that something you hear is too crazy to be true. I remember I got a phone call at the Herald one time that said they're selling stolen chickens at the cemetery. And I was like, what? They said they have a truck. Someone stole a Tyson truck and they're giving away free frozen whole chickens at the cemetery. I didn't even ride by. I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, I'm not wasting my time. And then it was true. Like, somebody stole a 18-wheeler, a frozen chicken, and was giving it away in town. So don't ever think that a tip is too crazy. Check it out. What are you going to waste? A few minutes and some gas, maybe? And that's kind of it was a funny thing. But then those tips too about, mismanagement of funds or corruption or nepotism, you get those all the time, and sometimes you'll get overwhelmed trying to follow up to see if they're right. But for every 10 that are wrong, there's that one that's right. So always follow any tip that comes your way. Now you do have your local crazies that you just you kind of can filter out like the legit ones sometimes, but I feel like y'all need to talk to me because I feel like I'm rambling. Whoever. I'm all over the place. I'm scattered brain.
how often in your writing do you have to localize like national stories? And even with like the statewide stories, like how do you kind of like have that balance between like those national stories that you have to localize, and then those statewide stories that you try to localize as well within like the Delta, and obviously those more local stories. Just
Like
kind of
for
how's that balance?
like for example, I saw where. Okay, here's an example. I saw where the state legislation is now moving things into motion where juveniles and gun crimes could be charged as adults. And at first, I was like, the first thing I said was, how can I localize this? And unfortunately, in Yazoo, Yazoo County has a population, I'm not sure of the exact population, but we're a rural community. And our violence is out of this world for a town our size. It is, and it's young people. I hate to say it, there was a spell there where every week I was writing about a kid getting killed by another kid with gunfire, with guns. And it's gang related, it's a number of things. But for example, that juvenile crime is horrible in our community. Well, instantly when I read that story, I was like, well, that's how I can localize it. Let me go talk to my sheriff and my police chief and say, now that you can charge these kids as adults, regardless if it's a violent gun crime, or how do you think that will affect how you combat crime? And how do you think that will maybe deter the criminal element? And in the grand scheme of things, it may not do anything, because you know what? If you're a 16-year-old kid and you think a gun is the way to solve your problems, I seriously doubt threatening to charge you as an adult will deter that. And that's a whole other angle that we need to work on, reaching out to our local youth. But that was an example of how to localize it. That Asylum Hill project, it was just a state press release on this project they're doing at UMC to try to identify these bodies. And the first thing I'd say, well, what Yazooans are in there? National news, that can get difficult sometimes unless it's like a specific, because it's just so broad and sometimes it's hard to pinpoint it down to your back door. But statewide, definitely, you can dang near apply any statewide news to your community. If it's nothing more than birth rates are down, well, how many Yazoo babies are we having? I mean, you can pretty localize anything, and that's what matters in your community papers, because I can read about what's going on at the Capitol all day. But until I know how it affects my neighbor or myself or my children, then that's when I might start paying attention. And that's unfortunate that we're not as engaged as we should be with media coverage and things that matter. But you have to definitely keep it local. And you start there by just asking your local folks, how does this affect us? How will this work? Why won't it work? And it doesn't have to be the gloom and doom stuff. It can be the fun stuff, you know. I mean, the main thing is just to ask that pivotal question, how would this affect my neighbor? And then ask the right questions and get with the right people. Because otherwise it may be something that they need to know that they kind of disregard, because that's going on in Washington, that's not here. So I don't know if that helped your question.
I wanted to ask about your experiences as an investigative reporter. So, like, what is one of the stories that you've done that like took like the most like work to like put into it? Because I know being an investigative reporter is probably not easy already, but like,
Right.
What's one that like you remember for like, man, this is like taking forever. This is gonna be hard.
Going back to the crime in our community, our juvenile crime is insane. I mean, it just blows my mind. And that one, I found myself getting complacent. I found myself every week reporting about another child that was shot to death. And I hate to say it, it got to the point when I called the police chief or the sheriff, I would literally say, well, who got shot this week? I mean, it was just happening so much. And you can write your basic crime like, John Doe was shot 4 times. This is where he was shot. They think it stemmed from this. This is who's been charged. Or they've not been charged. They're still looking. And I stopped one day and I was like, no, I need to get boots on the ground. I was like, I need to get away from just writing, hey y'all, we had another shooting. We got another person dead. So I literally got my purse, got my camera, got my notebook, and started going to some of these neighborhoods that these crimes were happening. And it was really unnerving because these shootings were happening a lot. And here I am, a little, full skirt girl with my camera and a notebook walking down these streets. It scared me. I was a little rattled of how I would be treated when I went knocking on some of these doors. Will I be met with anger? Will I be met with kindness? Will I just not get an answer? But I had to put that fear, something in my gut said, these people have a story and you need to tell it. And that helped me put that fear away. And I started knocking on doors of people I did not know in my community, people that did not look like me, people that economically did not grow up like me. And I was amazed at the number of people that invited me in their homes and on their porches. And I remember I went to one guy's house that was disabled, and he had bullet holes all by his bedpost. And he just started crying because he said, I can't even feel safe when I go to sleep because I'm scared a drive-by is and I'll get shot. I talked to the mother whose child was killed. Now that one's hard because she's obviously upset. She lost a child, and you're trying to stay professional, but you're also a mother. So before you know it, you're kind of crying with her. And then you're met with anger from some people. I went to some of the people's families who were charged in some of these crimes, and they were mad because my baby wouldn't do that. And he may not have, but what if he did? And you have to, now that's the hard part, is when you're met with anger. And the best thing to do is say, I apologize, here's my card. When you do feel comfortable, if you feel comfortable, please call me. But I didn't mean to offend you, and I'm just going to walk away right now. And 9 out of 10 times they kind of breathe a little, and then they end up calling me. And that one, that story, I did about a month's worth of reporting on not just the crime in our community, but where it was happening and who the people were. And it became more of a community story when I say that it reminded all our residents that this affects all of us when children are getting shot, when 13-year-olds are getting executed, which is what happened. And it bridged the community in the sense that this doesn't just affect black people, this doesn't just affect white people, this isn't just rich or poor, it's the whole community. And I spent more time literally just walking every neighborhood I could to talk to people. And that one was the hardest one to put together because there was so much emotion involved. It wasn't just your run-of-the-mill, hey, what happened, But that one meant the most to me because it eventually helped our city leaders realize they needed more manpower at the police department. It helped some of our civic volunteer and faith-based groups reach out to some of these homes where the kids were just being allowed to leave at 1 a.m. with a gun on their hip. And so did it fix it? No. I just hate to say it, on the way here I was on the phone with another shooting that happened last night. But I think it made a dent at some point, but unfortunately it's like a roller coaster. It gets real quiet and then it cranks up again. But covering the crime and really talking to the victim and the suspects' families and telling their story to me was probably, I feel like, my best work. That was the year I won the 3 top state awards. And plus I was really discouraged when I first started reporting. The city council at the time had it on a pay no mind list. I showed up at one scene, I got there before the cops did. The person was on the ground. And I'm sitting there like, now that one did a number on me when you get there before the cops get there, and I'm begging our city officials, like, address these things, like, what can y'all do as leaders to put a dent in this? And I kid you not, at the time, more time in that meeting was spent on parking spaces. Somebody was ticked off because somebody kept parking in their parking spot at City Hall. And I was just baffled. I was like, we got kids dying and you're worried about a parking spot? And the anger on my end kicked in then, because I was like, I'm surrounded by idiots, you know? I mean, they don't see that this is an issue here. But that's when I started writing heavy editorials, calling our leaders to the table, just calling them out. You can't be scared to call people out. If you are scared to hurt somebody's feelings, then y'all just need to find something else to do. You're gonna hurt people's feelings. You're gonna have people mad at you. If you don't have people mad at you, then you ain't working. You're gonna have people mad at you. But you have to do it in a professional way, but you want to ruffle feathers, because ruffling those feathers gets things done. And for a minute there, I think our reporting kind of helped put some things in motion to combat the crime. But unfortunately, we're right back where we started. But that one to me was the most memorable, because it put a voice to people. I had one lady say, we've had shootings in this neighborhood as long as I've been here, and I've been here 40 years. And you're the first she told me I was the first white person that ever knocked on her door. And then after she said that, she's like, but you're the first reporter that ever came and asked me what was going on. And to me, that meant a lot. It saddened me that no one felt the need to tell those affected stories. But then it made me proud that we're going to do this and we're going to do it right. So that one would probably be the most memorable, was that the covering the juvenile crime. Because, I mean, and the Jackson news stations like WLB3 on your side and WJTV, and I know we're live, not knocking them, but the state people, they come to your town when these things happen and they get those hot stories, and then they leave. If it bleeds, it leads, right? I mean, but you're vested in your community. You're seeing these people at the grocery store. You're going to be there when the news stations leave. So it's your job to do it right. And I never feel threatened when outside media comes in, because I know that I could probably get into more doors than they can and do it better justice. But I know that when they leave, I'll still be there to hopefully convey the message that needs to be said. So
I actually have two questions based off of all of that, because first of all, thank you for that, because I think that speaks to a lot of what we are trying to teach our students and some of the work that they've done. And so two questions. One is, how do you balance, you know, on one hand, you're advocating for your community. On the other hand, you're a journalist. Mm-hmm. And so you have that knowledge of, you know, I need to walk in this with no bias, you know, so how do you find that balance in your reporting and in your editorial work? And then the second thing is, can you give our students some tips about going door to door and how to approach, you know, getting interviews with people that you don't know and you're just cold knocking on their door?
When you live in a small town, it's hard to not write about somebody you know. You're going to know everybody. If you don't know them, you know their mama, you know something. And that can be troublesome to try to balance. We had a murder in 2013 where a local businessman was executed in a field. He was shot in the head, over $600. And I knew the family. Their children are in my kids' classes. One of their family is my neighbor. Some of the land that my husband and I own, we bought from that family. So that one was really difficult, because when they named a suspect, it was hard for me as a person not to just be mad, to be angry, because it was just a waste of life. But I had to take a breather and step back and know that, but he's got a story too. And I couldn't lean that way toward the family who I respected and loved. I had to stay in the fence. And that can be really hard, especially if it's happening to people you love and care for. But at that moment, you just have to realize that you still have a job to do. And the last thing I ever want is my credibility to be questioned. Because if it's questioned just a minute, then I lose the trust of my community. And then those doors won't open. Or when they read your paper, they won't believe it. So credibility is a huge thing for me. So like in that situation, I had to stay severely on the fence because I did not want it to appear that I was swaying over toward the family who I loved. And I reached out to the suspect's family and got their take on it. And in the end, he ended up pleading guilty, and he's in jail to this day. And there was finally some closure to the case. But I had to severely stay on the fence because if your credibility gets questioned, then you will not be trusted. I've had friends, this is weird. I have had a beer with a friend on their patio and then write about them the next week because they were charged with murder. That actually happened to me. It wasn't like a close friend, it was an acquaintance. And then they were charged with murder the next week. And one way I handled that is to be honest and be just upfront. The acquaintance I knew that was charged, I immediately called his family and said, I'm going to have to write about this. He's accused of shooting a guy, of murdering a guy. But out of respect for you, I'm not going to sensationalize it. I'm going to stick to the facts out of respect for you as a family. And when I did run the story and that still hasn't went to court yet, and I continue to cover it, that family, when they see me, they say, thank you for handling it the way you did. It is what it is. He's sitting in jail right now waiting to go on trial, but thank you for handling it. Now that means something to me, but you have to be upfront. It's like when you're with your buddy and y'all are talking and you want to tell them something they might not want to hear. You tell them, I'm telling you this because I love you. Just hear me out. That's kind of how you have to take it with your sources, is just have that initiative to call and say, I know this is a touchy subject. I know you're going to open up your paper and that's going to be on the front and it's going to be front and center, but I have to do my job. But I want you to know that I will respect you if you want to talk to me, and I'll respect if you don't. But I just want to give you a heads up that it's going to have to be written about because I got to do my job. And I've had people in town tell me before, they've just said, I know it, you got a job to do. But you don't want to overstep your bounds. Like your lead can simply, for example, in that situation, your lead could be, a local businessman is charged with shooting, and then kind of break it down and tell the story, versus like mayhem erupted after a beer-induced argument led to, say like you kind of have to have a little respect for the people because these are people that you're dealing with. You're not the National Enquirer, you're a newspaper. And so you just have to, that's what helps me keep it balanced with people I know, is that I don't want my credibility to be questioned at all. Because if people think that they can't trust their newspaper, then you're good as dead. And leading to the other one about knocking on doors, that's scary. That's scary. It's so easier to hide behind a phone and call somebody, but when I got to go knock on your door and look at your face, that can be nerve-wracking. But it goes back to credibility and knowing that you have a job to do, and you just have to. The worst that can happen to you is they don't answer the door, they slam the door in your face, they cuss you out. I've never been like hurt, or anything. But then they might talk to you, and that's the win. That's when you can get them to open up to you, is if that door doesn't slam. That's another thing. Get ready to get cussed out on a weekly basis. The first time I got cussed out, I went to the bathroom and cried. I was like, this might not be the job for me. And now I get cussed out, and I'm checking my email while I'm getting cussed out on the phone. I mean, it's kind of become second nature, unfortunately. But you have to have a tough skin. And I love it if you're sensitive. We need sensitive people. But if you're really sensitive, then toughen up, because you've got to have a tough skin. One day you will be on people's shoulders and praised like a hero. The next day they'll be wanting to have a mob come after you. I mean, it just kind of, it rotates with if you're loved or hated, so to speak. And now the scariest that I've ever been in on a scene, there was this bridge that's out in the middle of nowhere. And this the neighborhood out there was concerned because the ambulance that ambulances, when they need to go out to this neighborhood, since the bridge is out, they got to go like 10, 15 miles out of the way to get to these people's houses. So I totally understood their point of view. This bridge needs to be fixed, and it needs to be back open for this community. But I was on the phone with this little old guy. He said, I want you to come look at this bridge. Sure. I was like, where do I need to meet you? Meet me at whatever gas station, is in that community. So I go. And he's like, follow me to my house, then I'm going to get in the car with you, and I'm going to take you out to this bridge and show you. I said, all right. And when I tell you this is real, like it's a gravel road that you can get a bicycle down. That's how small it was. And I pull up at this guy's house, don't know him from anybody, and he wants to get in the car with me to go drive to the bridge. He gets in the car, he's got a six-pack, and I'm like, okay. So I get him in the car, and my heart's just thumping the whole time because I don't know this guy. I don't know. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I was like, this is like how horror movies start, And he said, I want you to go talk to Mr. So-and-so. He's been here 70 years. He wants this bridge back open. And we had to go over these railroad tracks. The road completely disappeared. There was no road. And it was a field. That was scary. I was like, where is this guy taking me? And I was like, is something fixing to happen? What is? And then all of a sudden we pulled to the left, and there was this little shotgun shack, and this little old man came out, and he told me how he was frustrated about the bridge. And I'm writing everything, and I'm feeling a little bit better at ease. And then we leave that house, and then we go to the bridge, and it's overrun with vegetation. And this guy, I kid you not, comes to the edge of the bridge and says, come look how deep this is. I was like, I'm good. I was like, no, I'm good. I was like, I get the vibe. I can see it. Well, let's get in the car and go. I was like, I got another meeting I got to be at, at 11. I need to get on back to town. I'm going to take you back to that. Here's my card. Just have them call me. Was there anything to be scared of? Maybe not. But you can see my point. I was a little uneasy about it. So in situations, those things kind of scare me. Those things kind of, because sometimes in our line of the work, you get so used to going out in the middle of nowhere or knocking on a door. What if one day you knock on the wrong door? What if one day something does happen that you only read about in other towns? So you have to be smart too, and say, and anytime you feel uncomfortable, yeah, a story is good to have, but it's not worth, kind of a situation that you don't need to be in. Oddly enough, it was way before my time, we had a reporter, I think she was taking pictures of them like using county trucks to put gravel on private property, which is a no-no. She got shot in the rear. And so when I hear stories like that, it kind of reminds you, like, people are crazy. I mean, people are crazy. So I try not to have that fear, and I try to be smart and safe about it. But at the end of the day, you need to realize that you're coming into people's lives. You're coming into their homes. You're coming into their privacy. So it can be nerve-wracking to knock on those doors. They absolutely need to be knocked on, but be smart. If you feel if you're going to talk about a flower show, it's a flower show, But if you're going to talk about your little kid who just got shot, it's a different scenario, 100%. And you just have to kind of be you need to know how to read the room. If you feel like an interview is going in the path it doesn't need to go, you can always stop it. And you can do what I did. You can lie and just say, I got somewhere I got to be, but here's my card if you want to holler at me. But anything else?
Can you talk to us about some mistakes that you've made or some challenges you've had to go and how you overcame it and how you dealt with the situation?
There's a little bitty mistake and then there's a big mistake. And I'll never forget, I was an intern at the Vicksburg Post. Anybody from Vicksburg? Okay. Well, I was an intern at the Vicksburg Post, and I got a man's name totally wrong. His name was John Smith, and I wrote Jim Thompson or something. I got his name. I don't know why I did that. I was a green reporter. I was interning. I did not mean to do that. And I'll never forget, my editor at the time brought me into her office, and she got on to me. She's like, all a man has in this world is his name, and you've done messed that up. And I felt that small. And after that, I've never gotten anybody's name wrong. I make mistakes, but I hardly ever make more than one time because I'm so embarrassed, when it happens to me. So now when I go, the first thing I do is, what's your name? How do you spell it? And I even sometimes say that's right? Just because I know that lesson's in my head, don't screw up somebody's name. But then you have big ones that they're hard to swallow because my pride, I'm not cocky, but I have pride in my work. And when I make a big boo-boo, that's embarrassing. That one hits. And I think, especially with politics, you have an assumption maybe of what's happening behind the scenes, and you need that one little crumb to complete the recipe. And if you can't get it, but you got this cake that's just ready to get cooked, but you lack that one ingredient, well, I can get away with not having that. And you roll with what you've got, and that one little crumb that you needed shifted the whole dynamics. That one's a hard one to swallow. Thankfully I've never been sued or anything, but I have covered politicians that I was positive they were doing something wrong. I just know they are. I got too many people off the record telling me, leading me down. I know they're doing wrong. And I'll take just a little of what I did that time and went with it. And then that crumb fell in my lap and I realized that I was off a little bit. And when you make a mistake with your friend, it's just you and her. When you make a mistake in the paper, thousands of people know about it. And that one was a hard one to swallow because I had to write an apology, write a clarification. You got to swallow your pride, and you got to get called an idiot maybe a few times. But that one time that I did that where I maybe should have waited, I've never done that again. I will have the juiciest story that I'm sitting on, and I might sit on it for 2 weeks until I get that one piece of, that one record or that one interview. Because if I roll with this and I'm even halfway wrong, then there'll be hell to pay. So I've learned as I've gotten older that you can wait to get everything you need so that you don't get questioned. I'd rather the politician have to explain themselves than me. So you definitely have to do your homework and just follow your gut. If you feel that, and know your battles, sometimes I had a call one time, so-and-so's parking in the handicap spot. He's not handicapped. Well, is it really worth getting my supervisor ticked off at me because I outed him about parking in the handicap? What I did was I called him and said, look, I'm getting calls that you're abusing the handicap parking spot at City Hall. Will you please stop parking there? Because I'm tired of hearing these people calling about it. And then he did. But can you imagine if I had wrote a story like, supervisor's a fraud, he's not crippled. So you kind of have to pick, your battles, because that goes back to community journalism. You got to live with these people. You got to work with these people. You can't get in your car and go to your home an hour away. People can find you. People can call you out. So But definitely, those little tiny mistakes, just learn from them. Try not to make them again. And then when you do make a big mistake, own your mistake. Don't ever try to explain yourself to justify why you might thought the way you did. Just own it. Your readers will respect you more. People will respect you more. And don't be afraid to wait until you get all your eggs in the basket, because getting that story out a week early is not worth maybe having to come back and saying, my bad, I messed up here. So have patience to make sure you get all your stuff in order for sure, because I don't like admitting when I'm wrong. So. And they'll never let you forget that you screwed up that one time too. So.
Okay, I have a clarification question first, and then I'll ask my question.
Uh-huh.
So, is the paper that you write, is it like a hard copy? Like
Yes.
It's printed?
Yeah, we're a weekly print and digital.
Okay, print and digital.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you go about like interviews and getting quotes? Like, do you handwrite that? Do you record it? I've just always wondered that about how some journalists go about that, because obviously we record ours on the camera, then we submit it, then get a transcript.
Right.
However, so I've just always wondered that.
I do shorthand a lot because that's just the way I was taught. These didn't exist when I was coming up. I can write shorthand pretty fast, and that's just from years of doing it. But now that I have this, I record everything. Because your hand might not write fast enough, or you might get back and look at your notepad and say, what did I write? You know, like you can't even read your own writing. Or you might hear something at that record and you're like, wait a minute, he said he had 26, not 36, you know. And another thing that I love about recording is you've got receipts. You have got receipts. You have got receipts. I cannot tell you how many times I've had someone say, I did not say that. And you said, I'm like, well, actually, I got you. You did say it. I've got recordings on here from 8 years ago, because I'm like, if it ever comes back to bite me, I'll be like, no, you know, I got it right here. And that's just a security. That's just a backup, in my opinion. Sometimes I won't even go to the recording. I feel good enough about my notes that I'll go, if it's just kind of a run-of-the-mill kind of story. But if it's a meaty story that I know might get some hiccups in the community, I record everything. I go back and listen to it. I might hear something. But I mostly do shorthand and record. That phone y'all are carrying around. And it helps too when if you're at a crime scene. I've been in my car going to Walmart to get something, and something's happened, and I've had to pull over real quick because I'm the newspaper, and I won't have a notebook. I won't have any. Hit record, make mental notes. Just be like, just talk to yourself on the thing. Have your phone ready to go up to the police chief on the scene. I mean, use it just like the old school recorders did, because you're not always going to have a notebook on you. Sometimes it's just easier too. Sometimes I cut my hand chopping onions one time, and my hand was all, I couldn't even write. I felt so helpless. But even just recording everything, it helps. I mostly record everything though just for backup. I've been burned too many times. I do not want anybody telling me they didn't say something that I know they said. And sometimes, unfortunately, I've for court purposes, you know, you've had people that I've never been sued, but papers get threatened to get sued all the time. And if you have that recorder going, I mean, that's your backup. It can make a lot of bad things go away. So I highly recommend recording at all times.
When you shorthand, are you able to use direct quotes or no? Do you just kind of have to summarize?
When I shorthand, like, I have abbreviations for things, like sometimes is ST, you know, or I abbreviate things a lot. And when I'm directly quoting somebody, I specifically put the quotes, and I'm writing super fast, and I'm getting it word for word. And those aren't really so much shorthand, because I want to make sure I got it right. But like all the other kind of notes, mental notes that I'm making, it's just, my husband looks at it and he's like, how can you even decipher? But it's just my own system. Because you got to do what's works for you. You're going to go to school and you're going to read textbooks about the do's and don'ts of journalism, and that's great. It's good to have a foundation. But you're going to learn as you get out and do journalism, do things your own way. Do things your own way. There ain't a right way. Wing it if you have to. Because I've seen some reporters that are meticulous about every single word. I've seen some that literally are rocking Post-it notes. You know, I mean, whatever's your flow. Because you want to feel comfortable working. Don't do it someone else's way. Do it your way. And if a Post-it note's the way, then do it. Anybody have?
Okay, you might have answered this already and you've talked about it a little bit, but like, how do you handle your emotions? Because I know you said that at one point you weren't writing anything except for like crime, juvenile, and you have kids yourself. So like, how does that affect, if any, your like home life on top of like having to deal with those like painful, emotional stories?
I'm a good faker out in the community. I'll go up against any Hollywood actor. I can fake it till I make it in public. And that goes back to me just having a tougher skin. But then when I get home, I can be me. And I can be upset and sad. And there have been times when, I've literally just like sat in my car in my driveway and just cried because something I saw just threw me off. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay. And you have to let it out if you prefer to do it privately, or with your loved one or a friend. You have to get it out, because if you keep it bottled up, it'll start affecting your work. And that's what you don't want. But on the same token, the fake it till you make it kind of in public, you still don't want to be a shell, though. Like when that mom's crying to you because she's burying her little baby, you don't want to just look at her just stoic. I mean, show that you're human too. If you feel it's okay to touch that person, hug them, rub their back, offer a tissue. If you feel like that person just doesn't want to be touched in there, then just step back and just kind of. So you definitely want to show emotion, because that's what gains the trust. That mom would not have talked to me if I'd have been like, I'm going to need you to settle down and just tell me what I need to. She would have kicked me out. But because they have to trust you. They have to, I mean, you're human just like them. But you do have to kind of fake it till you make it, a little bit. I've been at a murder scene where a body is getting covered and the family members are like grabbing the sheet crying. And I'm making mental notes and writing notes. And then sometimes I even have to turn away because it's sad. It's sad. But you just have to be respectful of everybody in every situation. And you do have to have a little front sometimes, because you have to be professional, but you have to be human too. Now, does that mean you need to be sobbing as loud as them? Maybe not, but just to let them know that, hey, I feel you. I get why you're upset. I got kids. I understand. And another thing that's hard to cover is natural disasters. Okay, like some reporters, that murder scene I showed up at, and the family's like grabbing the sheets and they're crying. That would probably be photo of the year, because it captures emotion. I don't do that. I don't want that family opening up their paper and seeing their moment of learning their son's dead plastered on the front page. I just have respect for people in my community and people in general. When there's really bad wrecks and a fatality occurs, I don't run a picture of the wreck. I don't want that mom opening up the paper and being reminded my kid got killed in that car. And some reporters do, because it goes back to the bleeds it leads. That photo would have been a great emotional photo. It would have captured the moment. Heck, it might have prompted people to want to do better. We got to get this community back on track. But I just had respect for the family. Bodies, wrecks, there's some stuff my human card comes into play. And But natural disasters, those are hard because I am taking pictures with those because you're documenting what's happened. A massive tornado came through Yazoo County, 2011, I believe. It ripped us up. I mean, it was y'all. I don't know if y'all how old y'all are, but if y'all remembered it. But it was that 2-mile tornado that ripped through the state, and it ripped through for like 70 miles. We had several people killed in Yazoo. Businesses were flattened, homes were destroyed. And I got in my car and I went all over the county, and it was nothing but destruction. Depressing as all get out. But I got out and I took pictures because our community needed to see what hit us. And they needed to have it for when we rebuild, to look back and say, look how far we've come. And in those moments when families were crying as their house was behind them, I admit I did snap pictures then, because you just kind of judge the room. And those families actually were not upset with me. When they rebuilt their home, they said they remembered that photo, and it just reminded them of how they picked themselves up. Crime stuffs are always hard to shut off at home because it's just a wasteless loss of life. And like I've been saying, 90% of the time in our community is children. That one's hard to kind of, but natural disasters I think are just as hard because it's just total destruction with the people you know. And there were times during the tornado aftermath that I went home and I was bloody from walking in briars. I had mud on me, dirt on me. And I was just seeing so many scenes of just destruction and sadness kind of wore on me. And I had to take a breather because it was just so much at once. And we're human. If you don't feel that, check your human card. You know, you're gonna. But I just choose to kind of just read the room. Most of the time I let it out at home, and I do let it out quite often. And then out in public, I either remain professional or I play whatever emotion that I'm feeling to a degree with who I'm talking to. But crime and natural disasters, they're the hardest ones to shake. And unfortunately, sometimes with the crime, our shootings become so common that this is so weird. Sometimes they become so common when I'm preparing for dinner, my husband's like, "What happened at work today?" And I'm like, somebody got murdered. And it's just said like pass the peas. You know, and sometimes I have to even remind myself, hey, you know, you're human, they're human. Because it just becomes so common sometimes. It's like the worst people you can interview sometimes are coroners. Because they deal with dead people all the time. And they don't sometimes have that sympathy. Because that's what they do every day. And they kind of get complacent. So as a reporter, you have to kind of put yourself in check sometimes. Because it can get easy. That happened to me at home the other night. And I stopped myself. I was literally cooking supper. And I was like, oh, somebody got shot. And my husband's like, did he make it? I was like, no, he died. And I went on and asked him if my son, if he had cut the grass. It was that quick of I'm like, oh wait, did James cut the grass? And that, I had to take a step back. I was like, wait a minute. That's not cool. That's because sometimes it can become so routine with your job but that rarely happens, but sometimes it does, in all honesty. But yeah, I'm a big carport crier. I've cried more tears in my carport alone than most would think. Just because, I don't know, I was raised in an Irish-American family where you didn't really show your emotions, so it's hard for me to just let loose in front of somebody. But it happens. Anything else?
All right, Jamie, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank you. I hoped I've helped you out. I will tell you, we need y'all. Our business needs y'all. it's got its challenges because we're all adapting to digital and AI. Don't even bring up AI to me. I don't even want to, we need hard-hitting we need boots on the ground. We need people knocking on doors. Do not put that crap in a computer and let it write it for you, because then we're all out of a job. And and AI's not even right half the time. But to look around and see y'all here, it does my heart good, because we hear so much bad news about how print's dead, journalism's dying. AI will do your job one day. My own son told me that. He said, Mom, you know AI is going to be doing your job in like 5 years. So by all means, don't get discouraged, because the second we stop asking questions, or the second all hell breaks loose. I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest. So I hope that I answered y'all's questions okay. I'm pretty low key, and I know I came off kind of how I did in some parts, but we certainly need you young people in this business, because the day you don't have a watchdog is the day the ship will sink. So definitely keep it up. You're going to get frustrated. When you get that first paycheck, you're going to be like, what the? Because you're not going to get rich, and you may not get famous. But if you can walk through your town and a mom says thank you, or you can walk through your town and get a pat on the back, and maybe even a cussing, you're doing your job. So, but
well, thank you.
Thank
ma'am.
y'all.
We appreciate
Yay.
you. So Jamie's going to stick around in case anybody has any questions, wants to do a little networking or anything, and then we also have something we do with all of our media mentors at the end of everything.
What,
where we do
hazing?
some-
No,
a little bit. No, just a couple of social media videos and everything.
Good
So
deal.
thank you all for coming to Media Mentors. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back later this month for the next Media Mentor in our summer series. So thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Y'all are awesome. Y'all weren't bad at all.